This has been happening since last April. That was I believe that was my very first live Q&A. So thank you for being with me through this evolution. You have been supporting me in my evolution, of course, which is something that I have talked about a lot with the original intention of the creation of this community called The Circle. And the reason why it is called The Circle is because this is a space for us to sit in circle together and to remember each other as the empowered, sovereign creators, teachers, masters that we are. That's why it's called The Circle. And it happens to be at this particular time that I am the one sitting here and you hear my voice the most, but that is also all in service for you to be empowered to use your own voice in your community where you are located. And that, of course, is all in alignment with what this Q&A is about. And if you are just now joining us on YouTube, welcome. Very nice to have you here. Thank you for being present. This new phase that we are moving into as a collective. Let me say, first and foremost, that the type of teacher that I am is not one who is a sensationalist. So I will not talk about things for the sake of sensationalism. And I also will not share things on YouTube or in my community with The Circle for the sake of consumption, content consumption. There is enough consumption in this world, and there is not enough critical thinking and true contemplation, taking time to deeply consider something that you have received, a teaching, a lesson, a transmission from yourself or from someone outside of you. So in this community, in The Circle, and anytime you're with me, that is always what I am going to invite you back to, is to contemplating things deeply. You are seeing me here in this role, and it's been for my entire life in this body that I've been moving toward this. And that's part of the reason why I really wanted to offer this live Q&A session with this very particular theme, because many, many people have asked me over the years and since I was young, but especially since starting this work, what is it like to be so psychic and still be living a human life? And how do you manage that? How do you balance both of those worlds? And also, how does that relate to the experience of someone who has not had the same sort of psychic experiences that I have since I was a child? What I want to really give to you, though, are a few pieces to keep in mind while we are moving through this Q&A. And there are many beautiful questions, so I want to make sure that I can answer as many as possible. And what I want you to keep in mind is every single one of you are psychic. There is no exception to that. You are a being who is psychic. You have psychic abilities. You have the capacity to tune into dimensions beyond this physical realm. There are latent, that means dormant or sleeping systems inside of you that may not be fully activated right now. I can assure you they are coming online. So that's the first piece that I really want you to keep with you, is that you have latent abilities inside of you, latent systems within your brain and your nervous system that allow you to tune into realms beyond the physical. First thing to keep with you. The second thing that I want you to keep in mind is that those latent systems are activated through your sovereign activation of them. Your nervous system in your physical body has to be attuned to the subtle, and it must be able to receive subtle information without being overwhelmed. So, let me say two things there. A lot of people in today's world, I want to say some, but it's actually a lot now in today's world, have their psychic gifts coming online at such a rapid rate, and they actually are overwhelmed. They are overwhelmed by their life and by what is happening to them. People who have never even believed in energy are having experiences like that. So that's a thing. And then there's another group of people, maybe some of you are here, who say, I have always been interested in energy, or when I was a child, I had energetic or psychic experiences, and now all of a sudden I don't know what to do. And they're latent again. Nothing is coming through. You also might fall in that category. And of course, we have many, many people in between all of that. But those two major camps, the biggest piece is that the nervous system must be wired to receive subtle information, which is an active practice on your part. It is not about, I do mean this with the utmost respect. It's not about going to 5 Reiki masters and getting a lot of energy work done, or going to, I don't know, a Kundalini activation class 15 times and then one day it'll happen. It is about your sovereign focus. It's truly very simple. Just as it is with everything in this life, wherever you're placing your attention, that is what's going to receive your energy. And that goes for every aspect of our life. So if you are giving your attention to the health of your body, you're choosing to eat healthily, you're choosing to exercise and move your body, then you're going to be a healthy person. If you are fixated on the pain in your body and how much you're suffering, you're likely going to increase the pain in your body. As two just very plain physical examples. The same is true with psychic gifts. Your psychic abilities, they come from your mental focus, your ability to focus mentally, and the calmness of your emotional nervous system. Just to say, if you have never seen an extraterrestrial, if that is something you have not yet experienced in your life, can you imagine how frightening it would be for your human self to see a non-human entity all of a sudden just appear before you in your room? It would be very alarming. Your nervous system would freak out. It would be very scary. That is true with almost anything that is considered mystical. If your nervous system is not wired to be calm, then you're likely going to have a scary experience. And we don't want that. We don't want people to be scared when they're tuning into the mystical. We want them to be able to receive it very fully because it changes you. The energy that you're receiving from an other dimension, it's going to change your brain, it's going to change your heart, it's going to change all of you. So, returning to how I started this, deep contemplation. It's not just about taking every course online, going to every teacher, every Kundalini activation, whatever manifestation gurus, whatever everybody is doing right now. It's not about all of that. It's not. And people don't like it when I say this, because what I'm telling you is that it comes down to you. It is ultimately your responsibility. That is the truth. Just as it is with every aspect of your life, it comes down to you. And so, I can hear some of these questions. I hear you whining to me out there saying, but I've done that, and I've meditated, and I've sat in silence, and I still don't see anything. Yes. If that is where you're coming from, then I can hear that there is a victim in you. If you are still holding victim consciousness, that is not the consciousness of a sovereign creator who is capable of handling deep esoteric wisdom that comes from non-physical entities. Just to be very plain, I'm sorry, but I'm just going to really say it how it is. A victim is not who an ascended master is going to come to. There's no other way to say it. Saint Francis of Assisi did not present himself to me because I was sitting in my meditation chair whining. He presented himself to me because I was sitting there in absolute love, just opening my heart more and more, with absolutely no expectation as to what might happen if someone was going to visit me. None of that was on my mind. The only thing that was important to me was that I was blooming my heart into a deeper level of love. That was the meditation focus that day. And there he came. Wow, full body chills. There he was. So I understand that sometimes, in some ways, it can be even more difficult for you who are listening to this message right now, who are already in a level of consciousness where you are aware of energy, you are aware of the ascension that we are moving through. It can be even more challenging to not get so fixated and rigid about having these gifts activated. But if there is rigidity within you, it's not going to support you. It's actually going to prevent you from opening. Because if you're grasping, that's not the way the subtle works. You cannot grasp at air, at water, at energy. You cannot grasp at it. You can only let it flow over you and become more sensitive to perceiving the flow of it over you. That is the practice. And of course, the way that we practice that is through meditation. So, I want to share all of that with you because I want you to keep that in mind, that that is how you move into this. And that is also the next phase, as I mentioned, that I have been called to move into. So we have had on this planet a lot of beautiful activation take place at sacred sites and some really powerful earth grid activations take place. That just fills my heart with a lot of energy when I remember that. We have had some really incredible layers of the earth grid be activated this year specifically. And it was successful. And that means that what we are moving into as a collective, for my focus as a teacher for the collective, is this emphasis on being able to expand the consciousness to take in more energy as an individual and therefore be able to utilize what we call psychic gifts. That is why next year I have actually not been called or guided by my own guides to lead sacred journeys at sites. Instead, I am actually leading 2 retreats, one at the Omega Institute and one at the Art of Living, for this purpose. Because it is time to bring the mystery school, as well as the crucible, which is what you're in if you come with me, bring that back to groups of people so that we can be prepared for what is incoming for the next few years. Because the earth grid, it's already been set in motion. The ripples, the beautiful dominoes that have been knocked down that are forming a new mandala for us to build a foundation off of are all toppling. That's why we're seeing the collapse of society, as people like to call it. It's just a new mandala that's being formed. And so the focus now is on empowering these latent systems that are within us and empowering people to remember their own abilities that are just inherent, that are within you. There is no one who is left out of these abilities. It's not that some people are born with this and some people are not. No, we are all one. We are all born with this. They are activated perhaps in slightly different ways, and they may show themselves in slightly different ways, but we all have this. So that's what I will be focusing on, which is again part of the reason why I wanted to answer these questions, and people coming and wanting to know what is it like. And I think it's a very important introduction, really, to opening to psychic gifts, to know what it actually doesn't mean to live as a human who is also hyperpsychic. Because of course it affects almost every aspect of my life. I mean, it's especially now, just because of how open and attuned I am. You have to have a lot of discernment and the ability to really just determine where are you going to place your attention. And also, once you receive that psychic knowing, that intuitive hit, Are you still going to follow through? Because I have received, it's been a lesson, and that has happened throughout a large part of my life, but I will receive a psychic hit of some kind, and then I have to go through the lesson anyway. So what I mean by that is receiving some information such as, when you leave your house, you're going to fall. And I know that, but I still have to fall. And so I have to still do whatever it is that's going to make me fall, because the lesson is not in the not falling. It's in the how gracefully can you get back up again. And I cannot tell you how many times that has happened. And also more complex scenarios, such as relationships, knowing when certain relationships are going to come to a close, and months or years ahead of time, knowing the end, and still fully showing up anyway, knowing that is a very difficult lesson. That's challenging, to be able to hold both of those truths. Yes, you know that this will end, and you're still here to show up fully. That takes a lot of commitment and presence, to just be present with what is right there. And I think I would say that is the other, before I go into these questions, that's the other piece that I think I would really like to highlight, is how present are you with you? We cannot hope to tune into the subtle and to be fully present with a divine being that deserves all of your attention if you're not being present with the first divine being that you are. This is where your attention should be, and I place my hands here. It's your heart, right here, the center of you, where love is. That is where we want the most of our presence to be. This is not where victim consciousness resides. Victim consciousness resides in patterns that have formed in the body, in the nervous system, and that come up and make these thoughts in your mind. That's where all of those stories come from. But it does not reside here in your heart. So this is where we always bring ourselves back to, and where we are fully present with. That is how we then become more present with beings that also live in their heart, and in that heart energy, we are able to open more and more to them, because we have attuned ourselves to our own heart energy. We have modified our own energetic system to be in the frequency of the heart. And so we are then able to tune into beings who live in the frequency of the heart. They do not live in victim consciousness, so you cannot meet them in a place of victim consciousness. They do not live in the consciousness of grasping, of taking, so you cannot meet them in that place. They do not live in the consciousness of expectation and trying to claim, so you cannot meet them from that level of consciousness. We can only meet those who are holding the same frequency in the physical and beyond. So if what you are wanting is to tune into the beautiful divine beings that surround us, that we can call all kinds of names that fall into different categories based on their energy, angels, ascended masters, non-physical beings, interdimensional beings, extraterrestrials, we can call them by many names. But if that's who you want to meet, then you must modify the frequency of your being to meet them, and modify the level of consciousness that you are carrying to be able to understand them. That goes hand in hand. So some beings, for example, you may fall in this category. Some people say, I truly can feel my heart open. I am able to open my heart at any time. And I am able to feel the energy of these beautiful beings, but I cannot hear them and I cannot see them. That tells me that your heart energy is fully online. You are meeting them in the frequency of your heart. Your mental consciousness is not yet there. And the reverse may also be true. There are some people who may have the mental capacity to hear certain beings or to see certain things. If their heart is not fully online and their nervous system is not wired for peace and love, they may receive or interpret those messages or the visuals that they receive in a scary way. You see, it takes both the coherence between these two systems and an expansion of consciousness in both of these systems, the mind and the heart, in order for us to accurately receive information in a way that is supportive for our evolution. And that is from a daily practice. It doesn't come from getting your Kundalini activated every week. It doesn't come from that. It comes from a daily, consistent practice of devotion. That's what it comes from. So, as I said, the first theme that I'm going to bring it back to, I hope that you remember, that I want you to keep in mind, is that you are a psychic being. You are a sovereign creator who is psychic, because psychic is just another word for mental. And as we know from our beloved guides, the universe is mental. All is mental. The universe and all is mind. That's what it is. Which means the greater your mental consciousness, the more you are able to tune into the greater mind. And there are questions that I'm hearing. What does that mean? How do we do that? It is through meditation, through the mental focus of expanding your consciousness, sitting in the mind of God. And that actually was a question on here, which I think I'll just save to come to that. But that is what it is. When you make your mind the mind of God, you dissolve all of the other aspects of you. You let go of your name. You let go of your body because that's not who you are. You let go of the personality because that's not who you are. You let go of your ancestral lineage because that's not who you are. You let go of everything that you think you are to remember who and what you are, which is God. And then your mind becomes its mind, and you become more of it. That is the process. That is what happens. And it's a daily practice. We sit every day and we come back to it, and we become more and more like God. So, this first question, which is quite appropriate, is from Kelly. Kelly is saying, can I share more details about my initiation in Peru, what it will require of me, and new abilities that have opened, how it has modified what I offer and show up for humanity? That's a beautifully appropriate question, based on what I was just saying. So yes, this this initiation that I went through in Peru, which was a few, but it was it had multiple stages, I will say. It allowed me to become a guardian of Shasta, Mount Shasta in Northern California. And that is a mountain that I have actually been connected to since I was a child. I have been taken there every single year. And it was the first place that I ever went into a crystal cave was near Mount Shasta. And that being has a lot of heart energy. And it's just coming in right now because I keep connecting to it. So it feels really nice. That being has a lot of energy and has been in a slow process of waking up. She is now, I would say, 77% awakened, which that 77% comes from the Arcturians. They're always very accurate with their numbers. She is almost fully awakened. And that means that there are beings that can act as intermediaries between her and the rest of consciousness, and also for humanity, and also the earth herself. What does exactly that mean? I don't really know. I because it hasn't happened yet. I don't fully know. The role unfolds, and then I understand what I'm doing here. I know everybody says, but you're psychic, so don't you? But I don't always know, and thank goodness, because Sometimes knowing is a bit of a burden, as I mentioned in the beginning. It can be challenging to know things ahead of time, too far ahead of time, because our human ego can get in the way and mess things up accidentally or make us doubt ourselves in some way. So that's what I know right now. And that is also part of the reason why my role has shifted, because my understanding is that I went through a series of initiations and also led others through a series of initiations through sacred lands, such as in Egypt and Peru, because that was a way of giving back, of being of service. And so through that, I then also, in reciprocity, I didn't realize that this is what I was doing, but in reciprocity, I have received now a significant initiation. And that means that I am here to support the activation and the grid system in Mount Shasta and around Mount Shasta. And that is connected to my own Lemurian lifetime. And Lemurian crystals are always what I have one here, are always what I sit with. They're with me most of the time. And so because I am now connected to Shasta, my energy is available for that activation and for the entire grid system that has been connected to Mount Shasta now. And therefore, it is not as necessary for me to physically go to sacred sites and open and activate sacred sites. There are now, it's a whole dominoes series and a ripple. There are now other beings who can follow up in the work and the foundation that I've laid and that people have laid before me and continue at those places, at least for the time. And so what it has meant is that this shift is that I want to bring, and am compelled and guided to bring, the mystery schools back to a large number of people. Because when I lead journeys, I'm only with 15 to 44 people generally at a time, somewhere in that range. And there are more people who need more support, which means I need to be at a place where more people can come to me. And so that means things like what's happening next year. These 2 retreats that I have been invited to do. It all, of course, is just in alignment. I received that information that's what I would be doing, and then I received these 2 invitations. So of course, it always just flows into the next thing. So that is a big shift, and that's also why now in the circle, I am doing these live courses every month, because there's not enough time really to teach everything that I want to teach and that has been coming through if I only save my teaching for one time a year where people come be with me for this brief period of time. There's so much more to share. And so that is how it's changing. What I'm doing is just by teaching more, essentially. So yeah, thank you for asking, Kelly. And I think, one day I'll share the full story, the full initiation, but there are many questions, so I'll share that story for another day. And this question from Maria: when did your psychic gifts turn from a tool to support your personal journey to a tool to support others? Wow. How did you use them to support your soul's evolution personally? That is a beautiful question. Thank you for this question. So, and actually this is so important because you who are listening to this, I can feel your hearts right here. You are so desiring to be of service. You want, oh gosh, okay, don't cry. Sorry, excuse me. You are so desiring to be of service. I can feel how generous and pure you are. There can be a feeling in beings like yourself that you want so desperately to be of service and to give that you actually trip yourself up with establishing your psychic gifts and turning them online again. Because again, it's that clinging feeling. What I want to invite you to is to consider that there is a distinction between determination and commitment. I want you to be persistent, but I don't want you to be determined. I used to be determined. I was very determined, and it got me far. It also made me fall a lot. It made me trip a lot. I got really good at getting back up again, but it did make me fall a lot. And I have now understood the soft path, the way of water path, the wu way, the non-doing path. That is commitment, not determination. Commitment is soft devotion, consistency, with persistence to overcome challenges, certainly. But that is the energy we want with establishing psychic gifts. Determination is that grasping, desperate, really hard, not helpful. So for me, that was a big part of my path of having this tool shift from being something that was just helping me, which was quite lovely, to being something that helped others. For a time, when I was living as a hermit for about a year and a half, when I was around 18, and I was just doing a bunch of research and meditating and doing yoga all day, every day. It was just a monk time in my life. When I was doing that, I was gaining a really beautiful foundation. And then just coming out of that, I was very determined that I was going to be utilizing essentially everything that I had just learned for the benefit of humanity. And could not figure out how to do that. Had no idea how to do that. I was still overwhelmed by a lot of life. And so I realized I had to just turn that back to me. I had to just continue to use my gifts and everything that I had just learned just for me, and recognize that in doing so, it would ultimately affect other people in a really beautiful and positive way. So my shift came when I received a very deep confirmation, actually from Debbie Solaris, who is an Akashic channeler. She's a galactic historian. That's what she refers to herself as. She is the only person who has ever given me an Akashic reading. She gave it to me years ago, back when she still did that. And in that Akashic reading, she essentially confirmed every single thing that I had thought about myself and thought about my path of what I'm here to do and what my abilities are and where I come from and all of these things. And just that one confirmation was enough for me to say, oh, okay, I really have known all along. And now I know that I can just move forward. And it was after that everything shifted, because I now fully believed in myself. That's a significant part of this work, is having the belief in yourself, just knowing that it is what you are. And mine happened to come through this beautiful confirmation from an extremely gifted psychic, Debbie Solaris. And so that was very helpful for me to be able to move forward and say, okay, all of those things that I thought about myself are true. And so now I can move forward. And the way that I started, I just asked my guides, do I have the ability to read the Akashic records? And they said, yes, you do. And I thought that could be kind of fun. I just got a reading and it was really great. Like, that would be fun just to see if I can do that. It was just this curious, playful, maybe I can do it too. And so I just offered for free. I just said, hey, is there anyone who's open to me practicing to see if I can read your Akashic records? And then people had some really profound experiences, and my name flew around the world, and here I am today. That's what happened. And so I did not try to make anything happen. I laugh at how I started because it's very sweet. It was just me. I was a Montessori teacher. And that tool only became available to be used for others once I believed in myself and I put in the work and the practice to determine how I can be of service to other people. And it happened to come through Akashic readings. And because I was not doing it, I was not seeking anything, money, a name. I wasn't seeking anything from it. I was just wondering, can I do this? And what could it mean for people? That was it. Because of that, it has led me here. So again, there was no grasping desperation in any part of what I was doing. It was just a curiosity and a very lighthearted, I wonder if I can do this. And I think the most important part that the most important piece that contributed to that success at that time was me being heart-wrenchingly grateful for my life exactly as it was in every single moment. I lived in a teeny tiny little studio underneath the house of an elderly couple who I would help out with sometimes, but I paid full rent. I just love my elders, and so I would assist them sometimes. And I lived there. I worked full time as a Montessori teacher. And when I had bananas on my counter, sometimes I would start to say, wow, I'm so grateful I have this fruit sitting on my counter. And I would be so overwhelmed with gratitude. Once I started acknowledging just this fruit on my counter, my heart would open and I would drop to my knees, literally, and weep with gratitude for how blessed of a life I had just because I had fruit on my counter. That's it. When you can be that in love with life, all of life comes rushing toward you. And all of life means all of creation. So that's everything in the seen and the unseen. Gratitude and being in love with your life is so important if you're going to be receiving information from beyond this world. There's a lot that contributes, of course, to how we do that. There's a lot of energy that needs to be liberated in certain ways and patterns that need to be reset in order for that to happen. And it can happen because I have done it. And if I can come from the bottom, really, really from the bottom, which is clearly what my soul signed up for this time, way from the bottom, and get to be on this beautiful vista where I am right now, I know that you can do the same. No matter where you are, I know that you can do the same. And so that is when my tool shifted to being able to support other people. When it became something light and playful, and I was absolutely in love with my life, exactly as it was. I did not need psychic gifts. I did not need anything outside of me. I didn't. The bananas on my counter were enough in my teeny tiny little basement studio. It was enough while I was working full time as a teacher. And then everything opened. So thank you very much for your question, Maria. And from Jenny, this will be fun. Could you talk about how you balance the human and the mystical in terms of relationships? Like you, I was previously in and out of a hermitude for the past 11 years due to massive shifts and periods of expansion. And I'm curious how you navigate your path post-cocoon with personal connections. That is a beautiful, beautiful question. There are a couple things that come to mind with that. I will say that, firstly, it does take a little bit of time, at least for me, to adjust back to being with humans again. I get so comfortable being alone because I'm not alone and being with the divine and the earth and other beings that sometimes I forget a little bit about the human social courtesies and kind of functions of speaking, and it does make me laugh because it's a little embarrassing. Sometimes it takes me time to return to that. And what I have actually come to realize at this point in where I am not meant to be so secluded. So I live in a beautiful mountain temple, my home in the mountains, and I have all of the solitude I need here. I get that. I choose to live in a pretty small area because that's just me. That's who I am. I'm a nature person. But when I come back to it, I have to really immerse myself with humans again. So even if what I'm doing is being in solitude just around other human beings, like in a cafe or in a park, perhaps, that's what I do to just acclimate to people's energy again. especially after coming out of such a deep time of seclusion. And the other piece that I want to say that comes to mind here is sharing with the people who you speak to where you are. Telling people, I've been kind of in solitude for a while, and I actually am needing a little bit of help coming back out again. And just telling them, can you be a little gentle with me? Can you remind me of certain things? I might ask you weird questions. Honestly, being really transparent with someone that you trust and feel safe with, I would encourage you also to do, because it will help calm and regulate your nervous system, because there is that period of adjustment where your nervous system has to readjust to entering society again, essentially, and then finding the balance of having your solitude, like what I do, for example, is the morning and the evening. That bookends my day, because my solitude is really my time with God. That's what it is. And so I will absolutely give that to myself and to God. And then if there are other times, other days where I just want to be fully alone, then I take that. It's an inner balance and just a knowing of what you need. I hope that helps, Jenny. I feel like I touched on something that you needed there. Thank you for that question. Yes. Okay, thank you for this question. And you're using exactly what I say, but maybe that's because you've heard me say it. This is from someone named Maneka. What is the best practice to learn the language of the heart properly? How do I know if I've made progress? This is actually a deep teaching that has been coming through, called the language of the heart, that I have been wanting to teach people. And it's something that I am actually going to highlight at these retreats next year, because it's very necessary. It seems so simple. It really does. And yet our heart is so complex, because it's where spirit comes through. So it is both, because it's a paradox. It is both deeply complex and completely simple at the same time. What I will share is that your heart, as you sit with it, you become more aware of it, and it becomes more aware of you. And there's a greater and greater and greater level of resonance between you and your heart until you are fully merged and your heart chakra is fully open. And then it keeps opening. Then it just keeps going. There's just more and more to open to. And there are greater and levels of coherence and greater levels of love that you are able to experience and open to. Again, this has been my path. Gratitude is the way that I have opened to my heart the most fully. And when I say that, I do mean experiencing and feeling gratitude in the midst of all other emotions. So the first big time that this happened for me is when I separated from someone many years ago. And it was a very challenging separation for me, because it was clear that it didn't work and I fully loved this person, and it brought up a lot of grief. And I knew this one day. I was trying to avoid the grief and kind of numb out and distract myself. And I said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I am going to go sit in front of my altar, in front of my mirror, and I am actually going to fully open into this grief right now, because I know that this is what I need to feel. I'm not going to distract myself from it. So I went and sat down in front of my altar, in front of the mirror, and just looked at myself, tuned into, felt my heart. And of course, immediately all of the grief starts coming up. And as I'm there, I am holding this perspective of observing what is happening in my heart while still feeling it. And I realize, wow, this is a full energetic release and opening that is taking place right now, just by me focusing on this grief. And the more that I tuned into my heart, the more I could feel energetically this opening. And I realize I'm on YouTube, but I am just going to tell you the story truthfully. There's no other way to say this. It felt like an orgasm in my heart, even though it was grief. this moving energy, this undulation of energy in my heart center was nothing I had ever felt before. And in that process of being so attuned to the grief, I started to feel ecstasy. And I realized in that moment, I had the epiphany, the embodied understanding. This is why all of the mystics, the Sufis, the yogis say on the other side of every emotion is ecstasy. Your soul is experiencing ecstasy right now. That's its natural state because it's God. And so when we fully tune in to what we are feeling, we experience ecstasy. What I have learned is that we are able to do that through gratitude. That is what allows us to learn the language of the heart, is being so in tune with what is happening energetically that we can feel it like it is a muscle moving. That is how strong the energy of the heart is. When we then become, and that is a very physical human example. That's for grief. The same is true for rage. The same is true for joy and for love. Those are the 4 sacred emotions. We can feel in what seems to be a very physical way, like there are muscles, we can feel those 4 emotions the most easily. Grief, rage, joy, and love. I heard you ask me to repeat that. Those are the 4 sacred emotions. When we have fully felt that, and we know what those, again, it feels muscular. When we know what the muscular patterns feel like of those 4 emotions, we can immediately turn on those emotions. We can just remember what the pattern of joy feels like in its movement and go into joy. The same is true with rage and grief. We can just turn it on and off. When we then grow our awareness to being more subtle, which is where I'm trying to take people from this physical to the subtle. When we then do that, we are able to be aware energetically of every aspect of what is around our heart center, which allows us to open and be more aware of more and more subtle information beyond us. So it is like having a satellite. They're saying that's an appropriate word. It's like having a satellite here in the center of you that has a very small orbit in the beginning, and then it grows and it has a greater and greater capacity to take in more and more fields of information. That is able to happen when you are not processing only your emotions from this past of this current lifetime. We have to work through a good amount of the emotions from this past lifetime, enough to then be able to process emotions from your ancestors, and then emotions from parallel lifetimes. And then we get to being able to process emotions for the collective. Now, it's all interwoven. So there's not necessarily a way to distinguish. There's that layer and that layer and that layer. It's not necessarily that you're able to fully distinguish that. Some people are. Some people are very sensitive and aware of that. Some people are not. However, what it tells you is that your capacity, your individual ability, when you can be aware, or at least know that you're able to process all of those different layers, that tells you that your capacity has grown quite big. There are some people who say, I know that I'm processing this for the collective, and they're totally unaware of their own individual self because they have kind of bypassed that. And so, yes, they might be doing work for the collective and releasing a lot for the collective, but they are not bringing it to themselves. If you are someone who has said or continues to say, this is grief that I'm releasing for the collective, I do want you to bring it back to yourself and also say and ask, what grief is this helping me release right now? What grief is this helping me release from this body or from this lineage or from a parallel lifetime. But especially this body. That is really the thing that I want you to bring it back to the most, because only you can release things from your body. This is yours for the time being. And so it's your responsibility to let go of this grief or rage or any other emotions that you're holding on to. And as we do that, the language of the heart is something that becomes inherent to us. It becomes second nature. And now, I could just talking about my heart and she's right there. She just pops open like a little flower. That's what happens when it used to be so difficult to tune into my heart. And I would really have to sit for quite a while to then feel my heart coming online with more energy. But eventually you just say heart and then there's joy that opens. You say love and then there's wow, an opening of love that can be so swelling in your heart that it brings tears to your eyes. That's what happens. So thank you very much for asking that question. And I hope that all of that also answers, that's how you know you're making progress, when you just tune in and there it is. Thank you for that question. And from Jenny, how can we ever know that we are doing enough to support this evolution in consciousness and our own individual growth? Yes. So in terms of helping the collective consciousness, it always just comes back to you. I know people don't like it when I say that, but it is the truth. It is the truth. There's a reason why it's always been in every wisdom tradition that holds truth. It's just you. It always comes back to you because you are a representation of the whole. You are a representation of the whole. And so everything that you do to yourself, you do to another. You do to the collective and vice versa. So now that we have the collective out of the way, let's just focus on you, the individual. How do you know if you're doing enough? If you're evolving, and only you know if you are becoming a different person. That has been my focus since I was 14 years old. Since I was 14 years old, I have been focused on, I am going to become a different person. I'm going to evolve. And it has never left me. And I have become a different people who have known me throughout the years have said, wow, you have lived so many lifetimes in one life because you've done so much. Yes, it's because I have chosen to become a different person as often as possible with my full heart, knowing that it wasn't going to be that way forever. I went into, as I've mentioned earlier, becoming a Montessori elementary teacher. I went into that knowing that I was not going to stay that forever. I knew that. I went into everything that I've done. I've known this is not going to be forever, but I know that this is what I'm here to do right now, and I will give it 125% of my effort. That is what I will do. So, you know if you're doing enough, if you are changing. And it's really so simple. It's not about psychic gifts. It's not about how long you can stay out of your body or how many visuals you can have in meditation. Are you becoming a more loving person? Are you more patient? Less reactive? Are you less judgmental? Are you more kind to the barista? Do you not yell as often? When someone cuts you off in traffic, are you able to just say, I let it go. Peace be with you. When someone does something that an egoic part of you wants to blame, can you just say, it's not worth it. I care more about peace than blaming this person. That's it. Do you feel happier? Are you more in love with life? Are you expressing gratitude more? Do you smile when you first wake up because you're so happy that you get another day? Are you aware that your life is the gift? And are you coming closer to that every day? That's how you know. That's how you know. When life becomes the gift and you stop asking, that's how you know. And I really do hope that you let that be your guiding star. Thank you for that question, Jenny. From Bolor. Hi, Eluña. It is so inspiring to see how smoothly you communicate with different beings and your own guides. What practices help you receive clear, reliable communication? Does your approach change depending on who you're connecting with? Okay, so let me go to the first question. What practices help you receive clear, reliable communication? So this actually brings me to my the beginning, my childhood, really. And I'm telling you this so that you can understand why I am available to help teach other people how to do this. Not to say that if you have not had this experience, then you're not going to be where I am. So just to make that clear. When I was 3 years old, I started to have night classes every night that I would go to bed. And so what that meant was truly I would just lay my head down on my pillow, and then all of a sudden I would be in the nothing. I would just be taken, and then I would receive a bunch of information. I would be spoken to. So sometimes I would be in actual classrooms. I will say, most of the time, they would kind of take away the memory of what I saw in the classrooms, because I was a 3-year-old human consciousness in a classroom with, kind of non-human entities that would have been kind of freaky to a 3-year-old human child. So they would kind of take away those memories. And the thing that would remain was just the lesson. And then that changed over the years, where then I was, instead of being taken into the void, now I needed to take myself into the void. That's what kind of set everything in motion. And that started around 6 years old or so, 5.5, 6 years old, where I then had to go into the void. After a number of years, so going on, let's see, around 6 years, maybe 4.5 years. After that, after just going into the void, I then started to receive lessons specifically on activating and tuning my pineal gland. And I'm pointing to the back of my head because that's the pineal gland, where it's located, in the center back of your head, technically speaking. So the third eye is the gateway that leads there, but the location is the center back of your brain. And that is where my guides had me place my attention, was the center back of my brain. And they were teaching me how to truly adjust my attention like a radio dial. That is what they had me do. And there's no other way to explain that. It was all energetic, of truly adjusting. And it was like a thread. I would focus on one thread and then have to adjust and move. And then there would be another thread, adjust and move, and then another thread. And it started with frequencies on Earth, which was kind of weird, to be honest. It was weirder than when I went off Earth. And the reason why is because adjusting to a frequency on Earth, it was truly a radio signal. And so that meant I would hear music in my head from a radio on Earth, which for a 9.5-year-old is kind of a trippy thing. Even though I'm going into the void, hearing music in your head and a radio ad in your head is a little weird. It's weird. And then it got stranger when I would hear trucker frequencies, and I didn't even know that truckers did that. I was very confused the first time that happened. I still remember the first time I tuned into that. And the first time I ever tuned into a police radio, I didn't know that either. That police people used radios, and it was very confusing what I was listening to. Anyway, the reason why I was trained how to do that was because it attuned my pineal gland to then be able to go into energies that are not from Earth. And so then that was the next thing. And I will tell you that felt a lot more natural, and I liked it a lot more to go off Earth than to do the weird radio frequencies. And so then I started learning how to do that. And that just meant that sometimes they would have me adjust my frequency right before I was going to fall asleep so that I could then tune into a certain dimension in the dream space. So that is how I have done that. And that's part of the reason why I suppose that I have the ability to tune in to so many different beings. I mean, I haven't studied this ever, so I can only go off of my own experience, but I assume that is the reason why I have this ability. And that's one of the ways that it stays very clear for me, because I can physically, in a sense, even though it's all energetic, I can feel the frequency of what I'm tuning into. And so when it is a crystal clear thread with no static, there's nothing jarring it, I can feel that. I can just feel it. And so in terms of this follow-up question that you asked, does your approach change depending on who I'm connecting with, of how I communicate? I would say that when I'm wanting to connect with angels, the angelic frequency, I really just tune into my heart. And if I want to connect with ascended masters, depending on the frequency of the ascended master, I will either go specifically to my heart, or sometimes I will do both my heart and my pineal gland. And that's kind of a funny, very specific thing, which I've never actually thought about until you asked. But for example, when I want to connect to Hathor, I will essentially always go through my pineal gland. She is a very mental being and has a lot of a very heightened mental consciousness. So it's almost exclusively through my pineal gland that I will connect with Hathor. When I want to connect with Mary Magdalene, I will almost exclusively go through my heart. When I want to connect with Jesus or Jeshua, I will go through my heart and my pineal gland. So it depends. And I would have to consider, it's just a knowing. I just know that that's the best way for me to connect with them, is in those different ways. So I will adjust accordingly based on that. And then the final question was, are there distinct stages in developing this ability? So that's why I shared the story that I did, is because of this final question. Are there distinct stages? There are distinct stages. And as I mentioned to you, that's a little snippet of some of the stages that I went through. And the earth is now in a different place where people are being kind of bombarded with psychic energy, and people are awakening at a very rapid rate. And that's again why I am wanting and needing and being guided to orient to holding mystery schools again, because it's important for people to not be left wandering around in the dark. When I very first started doing this work, sometimes I would go into the astral and I would see people just wandering around, lost. They're just aspects of their consciousness, and they're still connected to their human, and they're fine. They're physically safe, but there's this part of them that knows that they can go somewhere, and they're kind of confused. And I don't want that. I want people to be focused and centered and be aware that they are able to control their consciousness and where it's being directed. So that is why I am helping people to move through these distinct stages, because a lot of the groundwork has already been laid. So in some ways, it's a little bit like someone gave a group of 3-year-olds just a whole bunch of paint and then just kind of threw the paint to the 3-year-olds, and now the 3-year-olds are kind of throwing paint everywhere. That's a little bit what it's like with these psychic gifts coming online. So there's a little bit of cleanup involved in this initially, but then I hope to help people learn how to paint and without making a mess all the time. That's the goal. So that's where I'm at right now. And thank you for your questions, Balor. Okay. So from Marty, and by the way, this just because I think there was a question about time, and maybe I'm just hearing that. I will go until around 10:30, just so you know. For the next 25 minutes or so, just if you're curious about time. So from Marty, how do you reset your energy after a reading? Do you have different practices for a heavy reading versus one that is really personal or exciting? So I always, truly, when I say my energy stays with me, your energy stays with you, those are not just words, right? Just if you're going to speak, please make sure you are feeling it. Don't be empty-headed and therefore empty-worded, because that means you're just creating an empty life. Your words are your creation. So when I say the words, my energy stays with me, your energy stays with you, that is a feeling and an energetic creation that I'm having in that moment, where I am drawing my energy back into my heart through my hand. And it's a physical reminder, which is why I will place my hand over my heart, and then sending energetically the energy back to the other person from my heart to theirs. It's always just a heart exchange, because when I do a reading, I connect my heart to the person that I'm reading with. So I'm just kind of separating the energy there. And I will, if I need to, I will use maybe a violet flame to just put around me. I think someone told me once that comes from Saint Germain. That's just something that I've learned since I was a child. So if Saint Germain does that for you, then go ahead and use that. And then I really just tune back into my heart. If it's a heavy reading, I will just come right back into the center of my heart and understand that those emotions and that energy, that is actually for that person and not for me. I'm very good at setting boundaries. I worked with children, so very good at setting boundaries. And so I just do that energetically. That's really what I do. And beforehand as well. Yeah. I hope that's helpful, Marty. I won't go too far into that, because it gets into a lot of specific energy practices that I feel like I can't go fully into at this time. So I hope that's that little generalization is enough. From Vivian. Thank you, Vivian, for this question. You are saying that I put an emphasis on true meditation. Can I share how to truly meditate? And what are some signs that let us know when we are accessing this state? So true meditation is when you stop being yourself. That's one side. And then there's true meditation where you are only fully aware of yourself. And now, yes, it is a paradox, because there's no such thing as an opposite, right? They're all one. It's all one. So on one side of you're only fully aware of yourself, just on the other side is you are completely dissolved and unaware of yourself. That's true meditation. The reason why is because when you are meditating, you want to let go of all aspects of this body, of the personality, so that you can become something else. The other path to becoming someone else is to be so hyper aware that you are undoing patterns that way. Now, I will say that specific trajectory, it takes very clear intention to do that, to be so hyper aware of yourself and to know where you're going and where you're bringing yourself to. You have to do a lot of groundwork before going into a meditation like that for it to be as successful as possible. When it comes to the overcoming of you're moving beyond and totally dissolving yourself, that is a little bit easier, and especially to start with, it can be a little simpler because you're just letting go. You're just dropping all of it rather than trying to fixate on one thing and change it. So when you are truly accessing that state, when you do not feel your body, the only thing that you feel or sense is consciousness in the nothing. And you might say, but how do I know what that is? You're only going to know when you feel it. That's it. It's truly, that's the only way. There's no way to describe it. It's just something that you feel. So when you're there, nothing else exists. And you're just in pure consciousness. That's it. And you just feel it. You just know. There are ways to be as successful as possible to help yourself get there, such as closing down all of your senses with sound and taste and smell and eye mask and all of that. There are ways to be as successful as possible, but you'll know once you're there. Yeah, I hope that's helpful. There's a lot of information about meditation on the circle, so please feel free to explore that. The most recent class that I just did for the live course for the community is on meditation, so feel free to watch that if you want to get more information. Thank you for your question. From Natalie, dear Eluña, thank you for the clarity, grace, and support you continue to offer humanity. Your guidance helps us awaken in ways we can feel deeply, even when the world falls short. I'm truly grateful for your devotion and the light you anchor for all of us. Thank you very much. That's very kind. From your multidimensional perspective, what inner frequency or state of consciousness most clearly opens the channel for interdimensional communication, especially with our future, more evolved selves? I love this question. So, okay. Should I tell him? All right. Okay, I'm going to tell you. The beings that I tune into, like the Arcturians, very especially the Arcturians, they are our future self. That's us in the future. So you can understand that time is not real, of course. It's just an experience that we have here on Earth. And so when you let go of that, you are not affected by time anymore. And so you're able to just talk to anybody, and it's just you. You're just talking to you. So let's come down from the Arcturians. They just wanted me to say that because they want you to know that you're them and they're you because they think it's empowering. So that's good. And now I'm going to bring it down to a more human level. Your future, more evolved self, which means this lifetime of you, future you. It is truly the multidimensional aspect is the emotion that brings us into that state of being. So when we bring on the emotion of our future self, we then become our future self. I hope that is very clear. Let me say it this way in an example. Unless you are wanting your future self to live in a state of victimhood, then stop feeling like a victim. That is the only way to say it. Until we make the conscious choice to stop feeling a certain way and start feeling another way, then we're just going to keep creating the same experience for ourselves over and over again. So this was another question that someone asked that I'm going to just loop into here, which is, how is it that even through my time of being homeless and many other challenges that I experienced, how is it that I still maintained gratitude? Because I knew that it was the way forward. I knew that my future self, somewhere down the line, was dropping to her knees in gratitude and weeping about bananas on the counter. And so even when I couldn't do that, I chose to feel gratitude as deeply as I could. And it opened me more and more to feeling greater and greater levels of gratitude, which meant I was not feeling like a victim because I was feeling grateful. That energy, that emotion brings you to your future, more evolved self. The notion of fake it till you make it is somewhat applicable here. However, it's not faking it. You are feeling it before it arrives. That's the piece. So you're not pretending to be grateful. You are feeling gratitude, finding a way to feel gratitude, and teaching the body how to feel gratitude. Just like what I mentioned with the language of the heart, teaching the body, teaching your awareness. What does joy feel like? What does rage feel like? So that you can turn it on whenever you want to. That's part of becoming more sovereign and more conscious. And the same is true with becoming our future, more evolved selves, is truly feeling who our evolved self is right now in a very simple way. Don't make it all crazy, complex, weird of, oh, she's feeling like she can tune into these dimensions and this and that. Make it more simple. Just say she feels mystical. She feels like she is in tune with her multidimensional self. She feels psychic. If that is something that you're wanting to bring in, if you know that your future self has those abilities, then tune into it and feel it. You have to feel it in order for that to become who you are. Whatever it is that you feel, that's what you are. So if you feel like a victim, if you feel angry, then you're an angry person. If you feel impatient, then you are an impatient person. If you feel like a mystical person, then you're mystical. If it's real, if it's really something that you're tuning into, then that's what you're becoming. So that's the process of the future piece, that you're bringing that to you, right? That's how you do that. But then there's all of the work on the other side over here, which is everything that you're unlearning so that you can become that. You got to drop this baggage so that you can get to that place, because you don't want to carry your victim into your mystical future. That's not a good mix. It's not. We've seen enough of that in this world. So at the same time that you are tuning into and feeling who you are becoming, you are also moving through the practices of liberation of the energy in your body, the liberation of outdated, outworn mental stories and constructs, the liberation of the ego, the opening of the heart. That's the practice. That's the whole teaching right there. In a summary, let go of the old, open the heart, become the future. That's it. There are steps between. There are ways that I teach that. There are ways that other people teach that. But that's the work. That is the work. And the foundation of all of it, of course, is meditation. Just to throw that in there one more time. So the follow-up to this was, on an energetic or physiological level, how can we tell the difference between true higher guidance and imagination or emotional projection? Very helpful question. When we are first starting, you are not necessarily going to know the difference. When we first begin this work of tuning into the subtle realms and becoming more psychic, you're not necessarily going to know. That's why I say to my students, don't try really to just not worry about that and actually let that go in the beginning. Now, the catch or caveat that I want to say to this is, if you receive guidance that you should quit your job and move across the country and live around the world activating sacred sites, and you don't have any money, I'm going to encourage you to really deeply consider that choice. There is a beauty and a power that comes from faith, absolutely. And we are in the physical plane, the place where we do. And that means that there's a lot of things to do in order to set yourself up for success before you make a dramatic change like that. So in the beginning, again, it's a difficult thing to really know, because until you know, you don't realize that you didn't know. It's just like growing up from being a child to an adult. Until you become an adult, you look back and you say, wow, gosh, I actually thought I understood when I was this age, when I was this age, when I was this age. And then you keep getting older and you say, wow, I can't believe I thought that I knew, and now I'm here. And that's what happens. You look back and you realize, oh, wow, okay. That's the same thing here. As you grow your psychic gifts and your ability really just to tune into the subtle, to listen, as you attune to that, you realize, oh, wow, there's greater and greater levels of clarity. And now I actually know that that's guidance. Now I actually see what that means. And so we take it slow and we act with discernment and critical thinking. Critical thinking. The world does not want you to think critically. That's not what the mainstream wants you to do. They want you to be distracted, consume, and sleep. That's what they want you to do. It's like a herd of pigs. They just want you to consume and sleep. Whether you're consuming material goods, food, content, that's what they want. That's not a critical thinker. And that's no offense to pigs, because pigs are actually very intelligent. But I had to use that as an analogy. So, critical thinking and discernment is a must in this work. Again, if you think that you are receiving guidance, or if someone else tells you that your guidance is to leave your job, please be discerning about the implications of the effect on your human life before you make that change. And in the beginning, what I always recommend, knowing if it's higher guidance, is it loving? Is it supportive? Does it make you a more compassionate, loving person? Does it feel like wholeness in your heart? Always come to the heart and really, really feel the heart. Is this true for me? That is how I would make that distinction. And thank you very much, Natalie, for your question. Okay. So this question, there are only a couple more, and I really want to get through them. This question is from Andrea. There's kind of this introduction explaining that after a few days listening to one of my Q&As and doing a meditation, Andrea felt a significant amount of fatigue, which is not normal for them. And then they spoke to another member of the circle and learned that exhaustion and other symptoms are also something that they have experienced. And so Andrea is essentially asking me, what is that about? Especially when people come in person to different things with me, many times people experience what we just categorize as ascension symptoms. It is just old parts of your being let go of. So, for example, apoptosis is the cellular death that your cells go through on a day-to-day, hour-by-hour basis based on what stage they're in. It's kind of like you're just experiencing apoptosis in a large part of you. That's it. And so I would say that it can be nice to give gratitude for the exhaustion, because it's actually an indication that you are evolving, that your energy system is evolving, that you're being upgraded. So you can say, thank you very much for this fatigue. And I'm also going to go rest a little bit more, or go on a walk to get some fresh air, do some breath work to move a little bit more of this energy. Breath work always will help shift your state. No matter what state you're in, it will shift you. So if you are feeling fatigue or a little bit down, do some breath work to move some of that energy, and it will support the process so that it speeds up a little bit. Yes, that is what I recommend. And thank you for your question, Andrea. Okay, this question from Ray. When practicing various forms of meditation, I am often disrupted by chronic pain that makes it difficult to stay focused. Aside from self-healing, what adjustments can I make during meditation when the pain in my body keeps surfacing intensely and repeatedly? So I'm actually answering this question, because it's about meditation. And I was just called to sharing that there is a Buddhist practice, and I don't know if it has a name, because I have never properly studied Tibetan Buddhism. So please forgive me if I misspeak, but this is based on what I've learned over the years. There is a practice in which, when pain surfaces in the body, Tibetan monks will go into the pain. They will actually, rather than trying to leave their body, they actually will go into a meditation to enter into the point that is causing pain. And most of them experience ecstasy. Because on the other side, when you go as deep as you can into any experience, your soul is experiencing ecstasy. And it is a way of releasing and transmuting whatever pattern is causing that pain. So that is the message that came to share with you, to share with anyone who deals with this, is sometimes it's actually about going into it rather than trying to leave it, which sounds counterintuitive. And yes, it's a paradox, but that's why sometimes it works. Other times it is about truly just staying above it again and again. The pain comes back and you say, oh, okay, there's the pain, and I'm going to stay above it. That's it. It's because as you continue to stay in the nothing and you continue to stay above and beyond, because you're not in your body, as you continue to do that, the pain dissipates. Because the pain is caused from contractions that exist energetically in your mind that are then showing up as patterns in the body. And then other times, the pain and the patterns in the body are from your ancestral lineage or from parallel lifetimes. And so as you come into contact with God, it creates order in all of those ways, in your lineage, in parallel lifetimes, and in your current body. So that's why the other path is to be out and to continue to just say, no, I'm going to tune into the nothing space. And then it leaves. And also breath work, just to say that again, because breath work liberates energy. So if you were to do breath work prior to going into meditation, that might shift your experience with the pain in your body. Okay, thank you, Ray. All right. So these are some beautiful questions that are a little bit off topic from where we are, but I was asked to include them from them. So here we go. This is from Tamara. This is quite a stretch. This is a leap. I don't know if I've ever even said this online, but it's okay. Here we go. The question is, reptilian frequency and reptilian beings, have been coming up recently. Is this a time when Earth and light workers are ready to work with the frequency of reptilians and the beings themselves? To that end, how can we best work with them? So thank you for this question. Okay, noted. The reason why they are wanting me to talk about this, which is interesting, is because it is very important to remember, and remember doesn't feel like a strong enough word, to embody that there is no such thing as evil. If we go with the idea that God is good, then that must mean that there is something that is not God, that is not good. It implies duality. And that's not the truth. The truth is God is, period. The all is, period. It is neither good nor bad. Reptilian beings are neither evil nor good. And neither are you, by the way. Neither am I. I am neither good nor bad. I just am. So there are a lot of stories around reptilians, especially in this community. There are a lot of stories around them. And yes, you may be sitting there saying, I have had my own experiences and they do not come across as very nice. I hear you. The same is true, though, of leeches in our water. You probably don't want a leech sucking on your blood, but I'm not going to call them evil. That's just in their nature. Rattlesnakes, feeling defensive, they come out and strike you, and now you have life-threatening venom in your body. Doesn't make them evil. It does not make them evil. It's in their nature. It doesn't make them evil. The way that we are able to support that energy, if that is something that you have come in contact with, the way that we support it is how we support all things, is just with love. It's just through the transmutation process of love and neutrality. If you cannot love that, then just be neutral for now. And if you can't love spiders that live on Earth, and if you can't love just other beings, bees, oh my goodness, wasps. And I know you're like, hornets, what purpose do they serve? I know, I hear you. But if you can't love them, the ones that are here, it will be even more difficult to love entities that are not on this planet, that you've never seen, that you have even less understanding of. It's going to make it very difficult. So I first encourage you to love the earth that you live upon, all aspects of it. Love everything about this physical existence. Love this life, every part of it. It will be so much easier to love the non-physical aspects of life if you can first love what is right before you. And so let me just ask if there's more they want me to cover. Okay, so they're saying that reptilian beings will be coming more into our awareness because of their involvement with our history and how they are this kind of phasing out that is happening with their involvement in our planet. It's very interesting. I can see that they're giving me the image of them just kind of fading away. It's very interesting. And it's not a literal image, but it's them just, it's the reptilian beings just fading away. And so that's where we are, is that's essentially what's taking place. And so how does that relate to our reptilian brain? It is also fading away. I knew it was connected. So because we are raising our consciousness, our reptilian brain, the limbic brain, the oldest part of our brain, which is in the very center of our brain, it is the natural conditions of it are also fading. We are learning a higher level of consciousness, which is, they're saying, what this entire, which is what the purpose of this whole Q&A has been about, is to remind people that you are a psychic being, which is why that came through in the beginning, and to share that the way to move into becoming more of your natural self, which is highly psychic, means that you have to let go of the reptilian part of your being, which is everything that brings you into a state of fear. It's everything that dysregulates your nervous system. It's everything that, it's the learned patterns of behavior that tell you that you need to fight with someone, that you need to run away from someone, etc. That is all learned. And so we are unlearning all of that to learn about our future self, who is psychic, who is mystical, who is calm and peaceful, who is grateful to be alive, who knows that life is a gift. We are unlearning and learning all of that. And so that is the full circle of this transmission, of this entire Q&A. I didn't know that that's where we were going, but that's why, because this reptilian energy in both us and on the planet is being phased out. We're moving away from that, which is why it is important for people to learn how to calm their nervous system and learn how to accurately tune into realms beyond the physical, which is where I come in, they say, which is where I come in. So thank you very much, Tamara, for that closing question, because that just brought us full circle. So thank you. I apologize for the 6 minutes over. I will simply say again, well, first I want to say thank you all for your questions and just for your energy, your attention here today, for learning more about yourself through me and through my experiences, and also what it means to be a psychic being. And again, this is what I'm moving into. It's just this is perfect timing. I didn't know I was going to do this Q&A. They asked me to do this Q&A, and it's just perfect timing with everything that I have upcoming, which are these 2 retreats. And that's happening next year. So the Omega Institute is happening in July. The Art of Living retreat is happening in November. The retreat at Omega is 7 days. The retreat at the Art of Living is 5 days. Those are the 2 longest offerings that those institutes offer. And so based on where you are in the world and where you want to see the world, you can either come to Northern New York or you can come to Boone, North Carolina, specifically on the Heavenly Mountain is what it's called at the Art of Living, which is amazing. And that has a whole story unto itself. And so does the Omega Institute. The Omega Institute, Ram Dass, his spirit, invited me to go there, which is why I'm now a faculty member there. And the Art of Living, it's the Heavenly Mountain, and the beings that first opened that space kind of started to open that vortex again. So both of those places, highly charged, incredibly beautiful, their energy. And it's these mystery schools that I'm teaching about all of this that we kind of just went through, and what we are moving into as a collective. It's time for this to happen. It's just time for people to have the esoteric teachings embodied once again and have the nervous system rewired so that we can be more peaceful and understanding with our ability to tune into the subtle. So that is what I'm doing. If you are a member of the circle, thank you very much. The community, the online community that I hold, it is a place where we remember ourselves as sovereign creators and masters in circle. So there is not a sage on the stage. Again, even though I'm the one speaking, that is not the way the circle operates. And you have the opportunity to teach each other in this social media platform that comes along with the circle. So if you have not yet looked at that and would like to, please feel free to go to my website, eluñanoel.com. If you want to learn more about that, we gather every single month, multiple times a month now, for free Akashic readings and group readings, and also classes and meditations and more. So I would love to see you there. These Q&As normally I only hold for people in the circle, but again, I was guided to do this publicly, so here I am. And if you have not yet gotten the chance to be with me in person, I get to go very deep with you in person because the energy of the collective holds all of us, and that is the way that we are meant to ascend, is through unity consciousness. And so that means that in unifying ourselves physically in a room together, we are able to ascend and affect each other, activate each other in a very deep way, in a very profound way that is much more activating and it's much more efficient than doing things through the quantum field, such as here online. So if you are able to join in person and you feel called to join in person for any of or either of those retreats next year, I encourage you to just go learn more about it, because it means likely that your energy is going to support the group and also that you will receive a lot from the group. That's very much likely what it means, just because of the way that energy stimulates each other and how we are co-activating and supporting each other in unity consciousness by unifying. And that's my favorite part of all of it, is that we get to be together in this. It's not a solitary path anymore. We get to do this together and come back together in these mystery schools where the ancient teachings get to come through again. So I do hope, I would love to see you there. I would love to be with you in person. And until I see you again, may you remember your magic today. Bye for now, everyone.